So, Michael, as I said, we'll chant Arul Nirevana.
Right.
You can do a short introduction and then we'll start the question.
Okay, right, right.
Arul Nirevana Amudal Kadale Yaavum Virungum Aruna Giri Paramanmave Ilarula Punandrai Viripadithiyaga Vilangu Chittiramamiddellam Shamale Nimbale Uttidamai Nindre Odungiduman Nithiyamum Naren Hridayam Nadithiduvayarumpre Tanidayam Endriduvartha Ahamuhamaranda Amalamati Tannar Ahamidudan Engelumendrainde Agavuruvai Nangalindu Munnir Nadi Polum Oyume Unkan Arunācalaneyo Veli Vishayam Vittu Vilangum Arunesha Valiyadakka Nirkum Manathal Ulamadanil Unnai Dhyanithu Yogi Oli Kaadum Unnelluyar Guru Meedum Unnidathil Oppuvitha Ullathal Eppozhudum Unnai Kandellamum Munnuruvaai Anniyamil Anbu Seyyum Annor Arunācalavelgum Inburuvamum Nirāழ்ந்தே Arunagiri Ramanan ஆரியத்தில் கண்ட அருமறையந்த கருத்தியாகும் அருணாச்சலவஞ்சலமணியை தந்தமிழ் வெண்பாவால் உலகு கழித்தானு வந்து ஹரியாரீதர ஜீவர தகவாரி ஜகுகையில் ஹரிவாய் ரமி பரமாத்துமன் அருணாச்சல ரமணன் பரிபாலுள்ள முருகானல பரநாந்திடு குகையார்ந்து அறிவாய் விழி திரவானிஜம் அறிவாயது வெளியாம் வாழ்கவான் அருணாச்சலவன் பெயர் வாழ்க அவ்வையவாய் ஸ்துதி பஞ்சல் வாழ்கவாய் மலர் மாரமணன் பதம் வாழ்க பதம் மன்னு நல்லம்பரே வாழி வாழி ரமண மகாகுரு வாழி வாழி அருண மகாகிரி வாழி வேங்கடன் வாய் சொல்லும் பாடல்கள் வாழி ஊழிதோர் அன்பர்கள் வாழி.
That is very nice starting like that. I'll just talk for a few minutes about some of the basic principles of Bhagavan's teaching, and then you can start, just to sort of get the things warmed up, and then you can start asking me questions. So in Upadēśa India, in verse 2, Bhagavan says, my mind's gone blank. Vinayam Vilivuttu Vittai, Vinayam Undiyār, Vidu Tarile Undiyār. That is, the nature of action leads to more action. Because even though we exhaust the fruits of the past actions we've done, every action leaves a seed. That seed is a vasana. The inclination to do the same type of action again and again and again. So all actions, all karmas are self-perpetuating. Therefore, by doing any action, it casts us into the ocean of action. We get immersed in the ocean of action. Bhagavan concludes saying, Vidu Tarile. Therefore, action does not give liberation. So this is a very, very important principle. Any action, whether by body, speech, or mind, cannot lead to liberation. So the means to liberation cannot be an action, it cannot be a karma of any sort. But then in the next verse, he says that if we do action without a nishkarmiya karma, without any desire for a fruit, and we offer it to God, out of love for God if we do it, it purifies the mind and shows the way. Sorry, I know these things, I forget sometimes. Gati Bari Kambikum, it shows the way to liberation. So what is the way to liberation? We can recognize, we can understand what is that way to liberation only when our mind is purified. And so long as we are still caught up in karmas, we can purify our mind only by doing karma without desire for any fruit, out of love for God. That is the means of the initial stages to purify the mind. But the aim of all these other sadhanas by which we can purify the mind is to understand what is the actual way to liberation. Then in the next few verses, Bhagavan outlines what are the various types of actions we can do without desire for a fruit, out of love for God. That is, actions of body, speech, and mind. Because the body is relatively gross, speech is more subtle, mind is more subtle, the actions done by body are least effective in purifying the mind. Actions done by speech are more effective. Actions done by mind are more effective. And the actions that we do, nishkarmiya actions that we do out of love for God by body, that is puja. That can be ritual worship, or it can also be, because Bhagavan says there, Ashtamurti, that in Ennuru Yabam, it be seeing all forms of the world as forms of God. If we do with that spirit, nishkarmiya karma, that is good puja. Isanal pusane undikara. So that is this. That generally, that puja there in that context means ritual worship, because the 8 forms of God are various different classifications, but they're the 5 elements: sun, moon, and jiva is one of the ways of classifying it. So doing the worshipping jivas, that means all living beings in this world are forms of God. It is the same Atma, the same I that is shining in us, is shining in every other living being. From the smallest ant, and like Bhagavan says, Ariyati Karajivara, Dahavari Jagohail, Alvairami Paramatman, Arunachala Ramanan. So in every jiva, from Vishnu down to the smallest ant, Arunachala Ramana, that's Bhagavan, our own self, our own real self, is shining in them. So doing one very important way of doing service to jivas is not to cause any harm. There's so many sufferings we see in the world. We can't alleviate all those sufferings, but at least we can avoid contributing to the suffering. So, so living a simple life, or observing ahimsa, eating vegetarian or vegan diet. Sorry, have you gone? Okay, right. Okay. That all these simple things we can do in life to avoid causing harm to others, if we do it with the right spirit, that is another way of purifying the mind. And we can do ritual worship and so many things we can do. But these are all actions of the body. More important than that is action of speech, because the speech is more subtle. So the actions of speech are singing stotras, doing japa, and japa we can do either aloud, or we can do it softly within our mouth, or we can do it mentally. That mental japa is dhyana. So that is more effective than doing any sort of puja. And the dhyana, we can do dhyana when we try to think of God. Our mind, so many other thoughts come to our mind. So our meditation on God is often interrupted by other thoughts. So if we are able to do it without interruption, how we can meditate on God without interruption? Because of love. When we think of other things in the middle of our meditation, it's because we're more concerned about those other things. We're more concerned about our little worldly problems, our family problems, our work problems, all these things, than we are about God. So other thoughts come. Where our mind goes is what interests us, what concerns us, what we think contributes to our happiness or unhappiness. That is where our mind goes. So the more we love God, the easier it is to think of God without interruption. So in this way, Bhagavan outlines these, and in each of these verses, he says, this is more pure, this is more effective, more purifying. That's the implication. He says each is superior to the other. But what is the best of all, the most best kind of meditation? Bhagavan says in verse 8, Anya bhavatin avanahamaham ananya bhavame undipara and latinum ultimum undipara. So long as we consider God to be anything other than ourselves, when we meditate upon him, we are thinking of something other than ourselves. That's anya bhava. But actually, what Bhagavan teaches and what all the Vedas and everyone teaches us is God is actually our own self. He's ever shining in us as I. So when we understand God is shining within us as I, how can we meditate on God? What is the most effective way of meditating on God? It is to meditate only on I. That is ananya bhava. And that Bhagavan says, anatinam uttamam. That is the best of all forms of bhakti. It's the best of all forms of meditation. And what is ananya bhava? It's the same. It's another name for Atma-vichara, self-investigation. Instead of attending to other things, which is an Atma-vichara, we are attending to ourselves, which is Atma-vichara. So Bhagavan, in these 8 verses, he shows how the various different types of nishkamiya karma leads to the highest form of bhakti, which is Atma-vichara, attending to ourselves. Anatinam ultimum, it's the best of all. And this Atma-vichara, this is the way to liberation that we come to know about when our mind is purified by other actions. And but Bhagavan has said no action can give liberation. So that the implication is Atma-vichara is not an action. Why is that? Because when we attend to anything other than ourselves, our mind is moving outwards towards those other things. Even when we're thinking our thoughts in our own mind, still it's an outwardness. According to Bhagavan, bahya mukham, even attending to our own thoughts and feelings and everything, is all bahya mukham. What is antamukham? Antamukham is only turning our mind within towards I itself. Everything other than I is bahya, it's anya, it's different to ourselves, it's outside ourselves. So the only when we turn our attention within, that is the highest form of bhakti. And, oh yeah, attending to anything other than ourselves is an action, because it's a movement of our mind away from ourselves. But when we attend to ourself alone, there's no movement of the mind. But our attention is resting on ourselves. So our mind is not going outward, it is resting in its source. That resting in its source is not an action, it is our natural state of being. We are always self-aware. There is never a moment when we are not self-aware, but we are usually negligently self-aware. We attend to, because we are more concerned about other things, because we think we get happiness from all these, from our wealth, health, family, all these things, and we think the troubles that come and interrupt our happiness, so we want to get rid of those things, and we want more of the things that we think contribute to our happiness. Our mind is always going outward. This is all action. When we turn our mind within, we come to a state of inaction, just being. That is, instead of being negligently self-aware, as we usually are, we are attentively self-aware. Simply, we are not actually doing anything, we are just being as we are. Summa iru. That is Atma-vichara. It's just our natural state is just to be aware of ourselves. So trying to be just aware of ourselves is bringing us to a state of being. That's why in verse 9 Bhagavan says, Bhava balaktina bhavanatita sabhava tirutale undipara parabhakti tattva mundipara. The Bhava balaktina, that is referring to the Ananya Bhava he talks about in the previous verse. By the strength of that Ananya Bhava, that's by the strength of our self-attentiveness, by the strength of our Swarupa Dhyana, our Atma-vichara, the mind comes to the state of the Sat-Bhava, the state of being, which is Bhavanatita, beyond all Bhavana, beyond all thoughts. It's just a state of being. That, Bhagavan says, Parabhakti Tattvam. That is the supreme devotion. So all other forms of bhakti lead ultimately to Atma-vichara. Atma-vichara is the pinnacle of the path of bhakti. Bhakti and jnana are not two different paths. Jnana is the conclusion of the path of bhakti. Up to a certain stage we are worshipping God externally. That is all anya bhava. When we understand that God is within us and turn our attention within, then we cease doing action and we come to the state of just being. That is parabhakti tattva. That is the most purifying of all forms of sadhana. So though we can do all other sorts of sadhana, we should all try at least a little to introduce this self-inquiry, this self-attentiveness, this self-investigation, Atma-vichara, into our life, little by little by little. Bhagavan says in Bhagavad Gita Saram, he translated one of the verses. In the Sanskrit, it's Sanay Sanay Uparame. In Tamil, Bhagavan says Mella Mella. I'll see if I've got the verse. It's a very beautiful verse. Bhagavan's translation. Dhiram se buddhiyanal chittate mella mella nere se vendum nischalana maratane chittate anmavil se tiruka matredivum ittaniyum innidade. So this is a verse that is what Bhagavan is teaching us, is the essence of all the Vedas, all the Vedanta, all the Upanishads, all the Bhagavad Gita. It's all summarized in this one verse. Instead of thinking of anything else, we have to slowly train the mind. We can't do it all of a sudden. Bhagavan, as a 16-year-old boy, was able to turn his attention within and merge into his source in a split second. Because Bhagavan himself said, if someone succeeds in this life, seemingly without effort, it's because of all that they did in previous lives. So Bhagavan need not have been born in this world. He finished everything that needed to be finished. But for our sake, he took this, the Jiva who became Bhagavan, who merged in Bhagavan, took this life in order to give us these teachings. So, but for most of us, we are nowhere near that stage. We are We are just beginners, toddlers on the path. So for us, we have to take this mella. Slowly we have to approach this. Gradually. During the course of the day, we think so many thoughts. Most of the thoughts we think during the day are not immediately necessary. Okay, there are things we need to do. We need to go to work, we need to go to the shops to buy food, we need to cook, we need to eat. So many actions are necessary, but most of the actions we do don't actually require much attention. In the midst of doing all our day-to-day activities, how many other thoughts we're thinking? Are those thoughts really necessary? Most of them are not. Instead of thinking unnecessary thoughts, if we slowly introduce this Swarupa Dhyana, this self-attentiveness, this Atma-vichara into our life, sitting for some time for meditation is good. That is beneficial. But Bhagavan said that is not sufficient. We should be trying to do it throughout the day. Whatever else we're aware of ourselves. So we can always be slowly drawing our attention back to this self-awareness. What is this that is shining in us as eyes? That way, with that great curiosity, we turn our mind within. And according to Bhagavan, this is the only way. All other paths, all other spiritual paths lead to this path. But to enter the doorway of moksha, this is the only way. There is no other way. And the reason for this is explained by Bhagavan very nicely, particularly in Uḷḷadu. There are two key verses in Uḷḷadu, or at least for me they seem to be the key, because they seem to me to give the essence of Bhagavan's teaching. That's verses 25 and 26. 25, Bhagavan explains how the ego comes into existence, how the ego sustains itself. Urupatri undam, urupatri nikum, urupatri undu nika ongum, uruvitu urupatrum, hedinal otum pidicum. So the nature of the ego, by grasping form means the ego, uruvattapeya hande, he said, the ego is a formless phantom. It doesn't really exist. It seems to exist so long as we're attending to other things. But if we look at it, it's nowhere to be found. Bhagavan gave the analogy of Mapare Torum, the bridegroom's friend, who didn't belong to either the bride's party or the bridegroom's party, but he had a great time during the 5-day wedding, posing as from both sides. But when they finally started making inquiries, who is he? Is he your relative or your relative? Nobody's relative. When they search for him, he slips away. So such is the nature of ego. The ego is not the body, and it's not Atman. It's a spurious entity that rises between the two, claims the body as I, and the self-awareness, which is Atman, as I. And it mixes these two together, that is Chit-Jada-Granthi. So it's this formless ego, it doesn't really exist at all, but it seems to exist, so long as we don't look at it. This formless ego rises by grasping form. That means by attending to or being aware of anything other than itself. And it rises by doing so. The first form it grasps is a body. But we are never aware of, as an ego, we cannot stand without grasping a body as I. And then through the 5 senses of body, we become aware of so many other forms, which all, according to all are mental projections. So grasping form, it comes into existence. Grasping form, it stands. Urupatri urupatri nikum. So it stands, it endures by grasping form. Urupatri undu mika ongum. By grasping and feeding on form, it becomes strong. So the more we allow our attention to go out towards other things, the stronger and fatter the ego becomes. So only by turning our attention within, we can slowly weaken our attachments for all other things. And when we turn our attention within to look, what is this ego? Who am I who rises this ego, saying I am Michael or I am whoever, whatever name or form we identify ourselves with, doesn't matter. Who is this I who rises to grasp this form as I, and to grasp all these other forms? When we turn our attention within, hedinal autem pidicum, when so it takes flight, then it doesn't really exist. So this is why the only way ultimately to get rid of the ego is to turn our attention within, to investigate this ego. And when we investigate it, it doesn't exist. But we have to, we all try to do this, but we still haven't got rid of this ego because we haven't yet gone within, we haven't looked at ourselves keenly enough, vigilantly enough to see that we don't actually exist as what we now seem to be, as this ego. And so all these forms that the ego grasps, where do they come from? Are they all sitting out there and the ego rises and grasps them? No, they only come into existence when the ego rises. That's Bhagavan explains in the next verse. Ahande undayin anatum undahum. Ahande indrel indru anatum. Ahande yavamam. When the ego comes into existence, everything comes into existence. Because it's all, Bhagavan says, like the spider that projects, that spins the web, its web out and then draws it back into itself. The world, as soon as the mind rises, it projects this world. That happens in dream every day. Where is that dream world before we start dreaming? We project a dream body, take that dream body to the eye, and project a dream world. Bhagavan says exactly the same is happening in this waking state. None of these things actually exist. They all seem to exist only when we rise as this ego. So, ahande undayam anatum undaham. Everything comes into existence. Ahande indrel indru anatum. When the ego doesn't exist, nothing exists. Bhagavan says the same in verse 7 of Arunachashtakam. Indrahamenum nine Denikiravondrum. Nothing else exists when there's this I thought, the ego, doesn't come into existence. So in coming back to verse 26, we'll read it after. When the ego comes into existence, everything comes into existence. When the ego doesn't exist, nothing else exists. Ahande yavamam. Therefore the ego is everything. All this vast world we see is nothing but an expansion of our own ego. Our ego projects thoughts, and those thoughts develop as this vast world, which is not really vast. It's all just our own mental creation. And then he says, Ardanal yaduidu into nadale overdal yavam and or. That is by therefore investigating what is this ego is giving up everything. Because the nature of the ego, when we investigate it, it takes flight. When the ego takes flight, everything else takes flight. So in these two verses, Bhagavan has summarized his whole teaching, and he's also explained Bhagavan's teachings are based on certain simple principles. If we grasp those principles, all his teachings become very, very clear. So in these two verses, he's explained to us some of the very core principles of his teachings. If we understand these two verses, why he says in Upadēśa Undiyār that karma cannot give liberation, because karma means we're grasping things other than ourselves. No action is ourself. It's something other than ourself. So our mind has to rise up and go outwards in order to do any action. Therefore, when we're doing action, we're going in the wrong direction. Therefore, liberation, vidu tarile, it cannot give liberation. So that is what. So since no action can give liberation, the only way to attain liberation is summa ātma-vicāra. And how to attain that state of summa ātma-vicāra? It's only by turning our attention within. The ego rises by turning its attention outwards. It subsides back within when it turns its attention inwards. So this is the essence of Bhagavan's teachings. He's given, in just a few small verses, he's given the essence, and it's not only the essence of his own teaching. His teachings are the essence of all Vedanta, and Vedanta is the essence of the Vedas. So This is the saram of the saram of the saram. Bhagavan has given us in such a simple way. So what do we have to do? In Nāņa, he says, Kadavalam Guruvum Unmayil Veralla. Puli Vayil Pattadu, Ebbaru Tirimbado, Avare Guruvin Arupavayil, Pattabadal, Avaral Rakshik Padavare Andri, Oru Kalum Kaivida Pada. That is, Bhagavan is, God and Guru are not different. Just as the prey that has fallen in the jaws of a tiger cannot escape in any way, it cannot come out again. Those who have come under the glance of the Guru's grace, Bhagavan's grace is always there. We are never away from his grace. Once we are attracted to his path, we come within that, we come fully within his arupave. Not that we are ever out of it, but we come within it in a special way because we've been attracted to his path. Now there's no escape. We will certainly be saved by him. He will never forsake us. But, he says, Enninum Guru Kartiya Varipadi Kavaraju Nadikavendan. We have to follow the path that Bhagavan has shown us. We have to try to practice this Atma-vichara, which is the same as self-surrender. We cannot surrender ourselves without investigating ourselves. As he says in the next sentence, Anma-chintane kavira, Vera-chintane kalambadatu, Satram idam kodamo, Atmanishta paranai, Tanne isaniku alibadam. That is, by turning our attention within, by attending only to ourselves, and thereby giving no room to the rising of thought about anything else, that is truly surrendering ourselves to God. So we have to follow this path. Why can't Bhagavan do this for us? He is actually doing everything. Even the liking to follow this path is given by him. But we have to cooperate with him. We have to give our consent. Bhagavan is not going to kill us until we are willing to be, until we are giving ourselves as a sacrifice to him. We have to give our consent. And how we give our consent? By turning our attention within and trying to merge within. So I think I've talked enough now. You probably all have questions to ask.
He can hear me.
Yeah, so just a little bit louder.
Okay. Hi, Michael. This is Arut Selvan. I hope you remember me. Like long time ago, you were with Om Sadhu Swami.
Yes. Yeah, I remember. Yes.
Okay. So I have one question. I'm terribly inspired about it. Every day you used to recite Karnataka Stuti Panjam. And every day morning you go by bike to Girivara. Are you able to do sometime now and then, or like you completely stop going to Tiruvannamalai?
Well, I haven't been able to go to Tiruvannamalai for many years. It's when I was the 20 years I was living there, I thought I expected to live all my life there, but we cannot know what Bhagavan has. Whatever the course of our external life is given to us by Bhagavan for our own spiritual development. So it's all according to Prarabdha. It was Prarabdha that took me there 40 years ago. In fact, next month it will be 40 years since I first came to Tiruvannamalai in September 1976. It was his grace that kept me there for 20 years, and his grace that took me away, and at the moment doesn't allow me to go back. I hope someday to go back. When it happens, I don't know. But this is why Bhagavan allows these things to happen in our life. Why you are in California, I am in England. Why our life has taken a certain shape. We have a certain family, we have friends, all these external things. It's all according to prarabdha. And our prarabdha is shaped by Bhagavan for our own spiritual benefit. So it was obviously my spiritual benefit to be in Tiruvannamalai for 20 years, to go around the hill almost every day. That was beneficial for me at that time. For some reason, Bhagavan felt it was beneficial to take me out of that surrounding. When we plant a small sapling, it can easily be blown off by the wind, or animals, goats or deer can come and eat it. So it needs to protect them. So we put a strong fence around it. After some time, when it grows a little bit, we remove the fence, because if it's always protected, it won't grow strong. So perhaps Bhagavan removed the fence and threw me out into the world to learn something. But we can't understand how Bhagavan is doing it. All we can understand is whatever happens in our life, it's happening by His grace for our own benefit.
Actually, my question I just recalled the things. My question was, so are you able to achieve a time when because life has like a fun and frustration, in between, are you able to achieve the core peace in your mind in a event over a period, reciting all this yoga and associate with great?
Yes.
See,
all living in Tiruvannamalai, reciting Stuti Panchakam, being with Bhagavan's devotees, this is all forms of satsanga. But how much we are benefited by satsanga depends on our maturity. I can tell you, I am a very immature soul. Though I love Bhagavan's teachings, though I love to talk about Bhagavan's teachings, I love to think about Bhagavan's teachings, I know when it comes to practice, I am just a beginner, I'm just a toddler. So definitely these 40 years I've been with Bhagavan, I don't know what benefit it's done for me, but I've no doubt it's done tremendous benefit. But I still have difficulty turning my mind within. My mind still has a taste to go outwards, to experience the things of the world. It's still I'm reluctant to surrender myself to Bhagavan, as I know I should. So I cannot claim to have achieved anything spiritually, but I just have no doubt that by drawing me to the path, by fascinating my mind with his teachings, by giving me a little liking to try little by little to put it into practice, I have no doubt that it's doing tremendous spiritual benefit for me. But outwardly and inwardly, I seem to be the same. I was when I was. That doesn't mean I'm not making spiritual progress. Just we can't see our own progress. A child can't see when it's growing. In fact, having followed this path for so many years, I now am more aware of my own failings, my own shortcomings, my own weaknesses. So at least that is one benefit I got by following this path. I know how totally unworthy I am to follow Bhagavan's path, but how this is the only way that we can be saved. So we have to try little by little. However much our mind has liking to go outwards, we should slowly kindle in our own mind this taste to turn within.
Thank you. So,
does that adequately answer your question?
Yes, it is very inspiring. Yeah. Sadhu,
can you talk a little bit about your
yeah,
experience with Sadhu?
Sadhu.
Yes. How when you first met him, and what was your impression, and how?
People often ask me to talk about Sadhu, and sometimes people ask me to write a biography or to write about him. I find it very difficult to do because, for me, he was a very special influence in my life. In fact, I don't think I would have been able to understand Bhagavad's teachings as I do now if it wasn't for those 8 precious years I had in his company. But if I tell you about his outward life, I'm not really telling you about him. outwardly he led a simple life, but it's not his outward life that is important, it's his inward life. If you really want to know Sadhuam, read his poetry, read Ramana Geetam, read Ramana Sahasram, read Ramana Varahe. In his poetry, you can learn the real picture of Sadhuam, because he was pure bhakti. His love for Bhagavan is, I've never seen such love for Bhagavan. His whole life was dedicated to Bhagavan. And if you read his poetry, you can understand what heart-melting love he had for Bhagavan. So I can say I was very, very fortunate to meet him. How I first met him, when I first came to Tiruvannamalai, after I'd been staying some days, I heard that Bhagavan used to do Giri Pradakshina, and that it's a good thing to do. So I was curious. I also started doing Giri Pradakshina. I think on the second or third day that I did Giri Pradakshina, it was very different in those days. It's not like it is now. Very, very few people, even on Purnima, there would be just a handful of us doing Giri Pradakshina. Now I think there are lakhs and lakhs of people. But so if this was early one morning, and while going around the hill, there were the Ashtalingas. I'd seen the Ashtalingas. That was before, many years later, a devotee called Mupana Swami renovated all the Ashtalingas. So now they're all well cared for. But in those days, people hardly took notice of them. So when I was going around the hill, in the morning I went to Kubera Linga, and I went inside to see what was there, and I sat there meditating, trying in my own way to do meditation. And then I heard some voices outside. So I was a bit shy to come out because there were people there. I thought, okay, let them go. But the voices continued. So eventually I decided to come out, because if I stay in there too long, the sun will become hot. And there was Sadhuam and two other friends. I didn't know who they were, but I think they were eating some fruit or something, some bananas. So they offered me some bananas, and they spoke to me nicely, and then I went my way. I had no idea who Sadhuam was at that time. But soon after that, I had one Malaysian friend who was there, and he told me he was reading a book called Upadēśa Sri Ramana by Sadhuam, and he said it's a very good book, and he recommended that I read it. But I didn't know where to get that book. And he said after I finished it, I'll be able to lend it to you, because it was lent to me by Sadhuam. And then one day he said to me, "Shall I take you to meet Sadhuam?" So he took me to Sadhuam's place, and there I found Sadhuam was the sadhu I had met while going around the hill. So then when I read the Upadēśa Sri Ramana, that for me was the clearest explanation of what Bhagavan's teachings actually are, what actually is the path of Atma-vichara. That is explained so simply and clearly in Upadēśa Sri Ramana. So after that I started coming to Sadhuam. Whenever I had any doubt, I would come and ask him questions. But I was a bit shy in those days, so I was a bit shy to come more often. So I liked to go and meet him, so I used to try to find some pretext, some question to ask to go. So I heard that he was writing a Tamil commentary on Guru Vasaka Kovai, which at that time, a translation by Professor Swaminathan was being serialized in the Mountain Path. So I began to read the translations in the Mountain Path, and wherever it wasn't clear to me, I used to note it down, and I would go and ask Sadhuam. So after I'd asked him about a few verses, he said, Professor Swaminathan's translation is, because he tried to write in a poetic English, it's not always bringing out the full meaning of the original verses. So why don't we start making our own translation? He suggested to me. Then from that day onwards, I started coming to him daily. Every morning we would sit and we would translate. He would translate the verses. His English wasn't very good, so he would do it in his own type of broken English. And then he would write it on a slate. He would give it to me. I would copy it down on paper and polish the English a little. And when I had doubt, I would question him, what does this word mean? What does that word mean? And that way we started our translation. And over the next year or two, we completed translating all the verses. And we always intended to go back to it and improve it, but it never happened. So that now has been published as a book, but it was that translation of Guru Govai that gave me the opportunity to start coming to him daily. And then from then onwards, I mean, after a year or so, I was able to buy a plot of land nearby and build a small house for myself. And then I was living there just near to his house, in the same compound. And then I was blessed by Bhagavan for 8.5 years. I was in his company with him every day, constantly talking about Bhagavan's teaching, translating things, he was explaining things to me. I would hear other people coming to him and asking me questions. And only because of that I'm able to understand Bhagavan's teachings as I do. And one other thing Sadhu often used to say, he used to go around do Giri Pradakshina at least 2 or 3 times a week, but I used to do daily. But he said the benefit of going around the hill is it kindles in our mind the power of discrimination. It kindles an inner clarity. So by going around the hill frequently, we get an inner clarity that enables us to understand Bhagavan's teaching, that gives us a love to follow Bhagavan's teaching. And that was my experience. I mean, I can't say how it would have been if I hadn't been going around the hill daily, but I firmly believe what Sadhu said. If there's any clarity, like people nowadays, they sometimes say, oh, you write so wonderfully on Bhagavan's teachings, you explain Bhagavan's teachings so wonderfully. I say, well, it's not me, because I'm still just a beginner on this path. I'm not in any way qualified to write about Bhagavan's teachings. But if I'm able to understand them and explain them clearly, that is only by Bhagavan's grace. And I think that doing daily Giri Pradakshina for so many years helped me to get that inner clarity. That and that is something that I want. So if I'm able to explain Bhagavan's teachings at all, it's not because my mind is any purer or better than anyone else's. I know my mind is full of impurities. I'm hardly on the path. But everyone's being able to study deeply under the guidance of Sadhu Om, and so I'm able to explain these things.
So when the mind starts to project outside, what is the best way to start bringing it back in? I mean, do you have any that's what always happens, right? We start.
That's the $1 million question. we all know we should be bringing our mind within. The key to it is bhakti. Bhagavan used to say, bhakti is the mother of jnana. Bhakti means love. That love to turn our attention within. That if we firmly believe what is shining in us as I, the essence of what we experience as ourselves, what we really are, that is Bhagavan. We will cultivate that love to turn within. And when we are firmly convinced, like Bhagavan says, the happiness is our real nature. In sleep, we're all perfectly happy. Only when our mind rises and goes outwards, we feel unhappiness. So if we are firmly convinced that happiness lies within, happiness is our own self. In this way, by studying Bhagavan's teachings, reflecting on Bhagavan's teachings, slowly we cultivate that liking, at least to begin trying. And the more we try, it's like a snowballing process. A small snowball begins on the top of the mountain rolling down. As it rolls down, it picks up more and more snow and it becomes a big snowball. So also bhakti is like that. We start off with a little seed of bhakti, which Bhagavan has sown in our heart. We have to keep that, it's a small flame that Bhagavan has lit in our heart. We have to protect that flame, keep it burning. and allowing it to spread and spread and spread until one day it will engulf us. Sakalam Virangum, Kadiroli Mana, Jalijamalati Daranachula. Arul Nirevana, Amrakadale, Virikadiralyavum Virangum. He will swallow everything. But we have to do our little bit. We have to try to turn our mind within. Everything else will be taken care of by him.
Many verses and many places there's reference to the heart center in all of Bhagavan's literature. So I know for the Spurana you've given your own interpretation in the mountain heart. So for the heart center, when you do this whole thing of bringing it in words, what's the significance of you?
Heart means center. Heart means the core, the center of something. So when Bhagavan talks about heart, he's not talking about any physical place. He's talking about our own self is the heart. That is, Arunachala, in verse 2 of Pancharatnam, Bhagavan says, it's Arunachala who's shining within, who's shining in our heart as I. He, in our heart as our heart, as I. So the heart is I. The heart is our real self. So by turning our mind within, we are entering our own heart. Our own heart is the heart of everything. So heart doesn't mean a place or anything. Heart is our own self. It's in that sense that Bhagavan used the word heart. Ullam. It's what's within.
And then maybe you all, I know in the mountain path you did this whole thing on the Spurana, so maybe if you can summarize that.
Spurana, there's a very commonly used verb, puriyam. When we understand something, we say puriyam, anaku puriyam. Puriyam means what it actually, we can only translate it in English as I understand it. But what it actually means, it is clear to me. Anaku puriyam means it is clear to me. That Tamil verb puri is actually a Tamil form of spuri, which is the Sanskrit verb from which Spurana derives. In Tamil, Bhagavan calls it puripu or spuripu. But in most of the English books, they translate it as Spurana, which is the Sanskrit equivalent of the Tamil word spuripu. It simply means the clarity, the shining of I. I is always shining, but it's seemingly covered and obscured by all the Upadēśa, which we have superimposed upon ourselves. Our body, our mind, all these things that we take to be I, these are Upadēśa, and this is what is obscuring the clarity of self-awareness. We're always clearly aware that we are. No one has any doubt. Do you exist? Yes, of course I exist. I am. We all know I am. We have no doubt about I am. We know that we are, but we don't clearly know what we are. Because we now mistake ourselves to be something other than what we actually are. So that is, it's the rising of this ego, but covers and obscures. It can never hide Atman. It can only obscure it, make it seem to be something that it's not. When we see if we're walking in the dim light and we see a snake lying on the path, that snake is not actually a snake; it's only a rope. It doesn't cease to be a snake when it appears as it doesn't cease to be a rope when it appears as a snake. But to us, we don't see it as it is. We see it as a snake, though actually what we are seeing is a rope. So also, what now we experience as I is Atman. It is what we actually are, but we don't see it as something other than what it actually is. So long as we are seeing ourselves as something other than what we actually are, we are clearly aware that we are, but we are not clearly aware what we are. So when we turn our attention within and try to be aware of ourselves without these, that is, if we ignore all the adjuncts, the body, the mind, and all these things, and try to be aware of ourself alone, we get a fresh clarity of self-awareness. That fresh clarity of self-awareness is what Bhagavan calls spuripu or spurana. Aham spurana means the shiny of eye, the fresh, clear shiny of eye. Sadhuam used to pun on it. He said spurana is a new, clear awareness of ourself. Nuclear, new as in N-E-W, C-L-E-A-R, but also it's nuclear as in a nuclear bomb. Bhagavan, a few weeks after the bomb was dropped on Hiroshima, Bhagavan said, Devraj Mudi has recorded in Day by Day, Bhagavan said, when the atom bomb of jnana falls on it, all these worlds will be consumed by it, like a small spark in a huge heap of cotton. It will all be burnt, because the whole world is built on the flimsy basis of this ego. When the ego is consumed, everything is consumed. So this spurana, this is the nuclear bomb that will destroy everything. Sakalam and Verangam. It will swallow everything.
More question? Can I ask?
Yeah.
Okay. So, hey, Michael, this is again one more question, not related to Sri Ramana. So, you know Tiruvannamalai?
Yes.
So, that around 60-mile radius. During that period, like the early 19th century, around 1950s. So, 4 great scholars lived in that area. For example, Aravinda in Pondicherry and Ramachandra from Madhva tradition in Tirukkoilur.
Yes.
And then Kanchi Paramacharya in Kanchipuram and Tiruvannamalai Ramana. All within that period of time, window period of time, very narrow period of time lived.
Yes.
And a great scholar during that period all over world and Bharat, they are very popular.
Yes.
I'm wondering now that tradition or the great teacher, if you want to see, is weaning away. Slowly it's very difficult to find such kind of things. What happens because of the industrial revolution makes it, so what Karthik asked, like thinking outward more, so thinking inward is reduced. What do you think about this whole situation, scenario happening?
Well, things aren't actually, things nowadays, in spiritual terms, things are as they've always been. In a pond full of lotuses, each morning when the sun rises, 1 or 2 lotuses will blossom, because each of the lotus buds are in a different stage of development. So there will always, at any time in history, the majority of people will be worldly minded, people will be going outwards, but they'll all be at different stages in the spiritual development. So at any time, there'll always be a few souls who are near to blossoming or actually have blossomed. If we look outwards, it appears that everyone is so worldly, everyone is only concerned with worldly things. We don't know who are the real spiritual people. We cannot recognize. There are so many people who pose as spiritual, and people believe they're spiritual, but they're not really spiritual. Nowadays, spirituality is a business. You pay me $1,000, you can come and have my satsang. What sort of spirituality is that? But it's going on. We see it all around us. That is not real spirituality. There may be some person. He may be a rickshaw puller, he may be a goat herd, he may be anyone. How do we know? It could be a jnani. We just don't know. We cannot tell by outward appearance. So there will always be great souls. They may not be known to us, but all this is of interest when we're looking outwards. Bhagavan says, actually there is only one jnani, and you are that, Tattvamasi. If you want to know who is the real jnani, turn within, because jnana itself is the jnani, and jnana is jnanamam tanane. That is, we ourselves are that jnana, we ourselves are that jnani. Just because we don't know ourselves, we see this world of many people, and this person is jnani, this person is jnani. How can we know? We don't even know. We are jnani, according to Bhagavan, but we don't know ourselves as such. We seem to be an ajnani. So how, when we don't know what we ourselves are, how can we know about any other person? So we shouldn't be too much concerned about all these things. Who is jnani, who is not jnani? It's like in a dream where if you start, well, who in this dream has woken up? How can we know? So long as we see them as people in the dream, so long as we see Bhagavan as a person, by seeing Bhagavan as a person who lived for 54 years in Tiruvannamalai, we are limiting the infinite whole that is Bhagavan as that little person. So we are imposing, because we see ourselves as a body. Bhagavan used to say, because you see yourself as a body, you see me as a body. But I am not this. In my experience, I'm not this body.
I agree with you. So this whole context I understand, but still, so you referred Mupanar. So those days, very few people will go. Many times, I also derive lots of inspiration from him. He's the one left his crores of rupees and simply plucking flowers and taking care of all the Ashtalingam to establish it. So you can visibly see such a very inspiring person here and there. You know? So that kind of souls. You know? I understand that, what you are trying to say. Jnani is very difficult to find it out, but yet we can see a few people to follow. And
but what do we really? Now we have all come to Bhagavan. Bhagavan is our guru. Do we really need anyone else? If we start, there's some people who think, oh, we must have a living guru. But what they mean when they talk about living guru, they mean a living body. But according to Bhagavan, the real guru is not the body. Bhagavan is Sadhuam used to say, if living guru means a living body, that living guru will one day become a dead guru. What is the use of such a guru? We want an ever-living guru. Bhagavan is the ever-living guru. So when we've got this ever-living guru, why do we need any other body?
I'm not searching for guru. I'm just asking.
No, but it's a good point, right? To reinforce to all of us that Bhagavan is a living guru. This question was very good. I think it leads to the inquiry that we are always having a living guru.
Yeah.
I will get a question.
I have a question actually. So, how to differentiate the dispassion and laziness?
Good question. Good question. Yeah, it's if we have real dispassion, Bhagavan says in Nāṇya. I think I'll just get there. Anyate nada dirtal vairagyam aladu nirasai. So the real vairagya or nirasai is not attending to anything anya, anything other than ourselves. So if we imagine that we've got vairagya, so we can't be bothered to go to work today, and we lie around at home watching the television, that is not vairagya, because we're still attending to something other than ourselves. So laziness is a feature of the mind. It's when the mind wants to do what's easy for it, that's what we call lazy. But that is completely different to vairagya. Vairagya is where the mind doesn't move out to attend to anything other than itself. According to Bhagavan, that is vairagya. And that is, in the next sentence he says, tying the stone of that vairagya to our waist, we should dive within and get that pearl of Atman. So by refraining from attending to other things, by cultivating that love to attend only to ourselves, in that way we can sink deep within and achieve that Atma-muttu, that pearl of Atman.
Atma-muttu. Nice to hear the Tamil. Atma-muttu. So just one
question answer.
I have one more something related to that. So basically, if some thought comes to your mind, then you dissociate it. And if a thought comes, if a bad thought comes, you dissociate. If a good thought comes, you dissociate. But there are certain times where you listen to a very highly devotional music or devotional lyric, then you immerse into it. But if you apply the same formula, disassociate it, if you take, okay, it's giving me happiness, let's accept it, associate to it, but the next level, the thought comes, let's go to Hawaii and enjoy. So, can you please help me, because there's a debate going on.
Sorry, it was slightly breaking up. I couldn't I got the gist of what you were saying, but I didn't exactly hear what you were saying. I know you were saying about good thoughts and not good thoughts, but something I didn't fully understand your question.
Okay, let me put it in this way.
You should speak I think rephrase it.
Okay. So what I'm asking is that, like, if you get a good thought, so
Yes.
you dissociate it. Okay, this is a play by the mind, and if you get some kind of a bad thought, you feel it's a bad thought, then you get dissociate. But for example, like there's in a highly, lovable music, devotional music, or something about some Shiva or something. You completely, when I say I completely immerse into it, and I'm little having a problem whether to dissociate it or take it into it. If I accept it and get the happiness, then the next question comes into mind: why can't you accept and go to a movie and have happiness?
Okay, well, it's a different type of happiness. The happiness you get from a movie and the happiness you get from devotional music, for example, there's a difference between it. If we study our own response to things, devotional music has a certain uplifting quality to it. But ultimately, all these things, whether we are very, very much moved by devotion, hearing a devotional song, or whether our mind is drawn away to some worldly matter, we want to fulfill some desires or whatever, all these all these things are anya. They're all something other than ourselves. So if we're going to think thoughts about anything other than ourselves, it's better to think good thoughts. It's better to have thoughts of devotion and so on. But better than any thought, that is, Bhagavan says, Anya bhava avanahamaham ananya bhava me undipara anetime utamo undipara. So more than even the most lofty thoughts about God is the thought about ourselves. That's turning our attention inwards. Because what God really is our own self. So long as we take God to be something other than ourselves and allow our mind to go outwards towards Him, that is certainly purifying our mind. But it's still, we're allowing that ignorance that God is something other than ourselves to cover. We cannot know. In verse, I think 20 of Nāṟpadu. Sorry, 22. Bhagavan says, Mati Kolli Tandam, Mati Kollirum, Mati Ne Ulle Madaki, Patiil, Pati Tidutal Andri, Patiye Matiyal, Madi Tidutal Engon Mati. That is, how else can the mind know God except by turning within to and drowning in that light, which is the light. God is shining in the mind, giving light to the mind. That is, God is the light of self-awareness. Except by turning our mind within and merging it in Him, how else can we know Him? So long as we take God to be something other than ourselves, something outside, by meditating on that idea of God as something other than ourselves, our mind is purified. But sooner or later, we have to turn back within. So even the best thoughts, even thought about Bhagavan, we have to set aside, because what is Bhagavan? Bhagavan is our own self. So as long as we take Bhagavan to be a person outside, we are not seeing Bhagavan as he really is. So of course we should have devotion for Bhagavan. So long as we take ourselves to be this person, we nothing other than ourselves better than for us to have love for Bhagavan, to have love for Arunachala. But what Bhagavan teaches us is having love for his name and form is not sufficient. We have to go beyond the name and form to experience him as he experiences himself. He experiences himself just as pure self-awareness. Sorry, you will find I'm a one-tune monkey. I dance only to one tune. The question you asked me, I have to bring it back to this thing, because this is what really matters. This is what Bhagavan's teachings are all about.
In context to his question, I would like to refer
Yes.
and Aksharamanamala's Moham Tavittu Unmohamai Vaittu Enmoham Tirayan Arunachala.
Exactly.
The two lines kind of meet.
Somebody else has something?
So if we really want to know what Arunachala is, the only way is daily, little by little, cultivate this habit of turning within. Seeing him with the inner eye.
Michael, I think that's all in terms of...
It doesn't matter whether thoughts are good thoughts or bad thoughts. When we turn within, all thoughts recede into the background. Because thoughts are, when the ego rises, thoughts arise with it. So there will always be thoughts so long as we allow our ego to rise. Bhagavan is not concerned about good thoughts or bad thoughts. He's not. We come to Bhagavan with so many imperfections, and so many very bad people came to Bhagavan. Bhagavan doesn't see anyone as bad, because he sees himself in everyone. But he has diagnosed what is the problem. The problem is not our good thoughts or our bad thoughts, or good actions or bad actions. The problem is our rising as I to think good thoughts or to think bad thoughts. Of course, good thoughts are better than bad thoughts. It's better if we're going to think good thoughts rather than bad thoughts. As much as possible, we should try and replace bad thoughts with good thoughts. But that is not sufficient. Even the good thoughts we have to replace with this turning of our mind inwards, this self-attentiveness.
Very nice, Michael. So we'll conclude with, we'll just chant Karuna Purna in Sanskrit.
Okay, yes, certainly.
Karuna Purna Sudha Veda Palita Ghana Vishwarupa Kirana Valya Arunachala Paramatman Aruno Chitta Ganja Suvikasaya Arunachala Sarvam Bhutva Sthitva Pralinameta Chitram Pravidyahamityatmataya Nritya Siddhoste Vadanti Hridayam Nama Ahamiti Buddha Ayadityan Vishyanta Pravishchayatya Maladiya Avagam Yaswam Rupam Shamyatyarunachalatvai Nadipatho Yattva Vishayam Vahyam Ruddha Pranena Ruddha Manasantaswam Dhyayan Pashyati Yogi Arunachalatvai Maniyamte Tvayarpitamanasa Tvam Pashyan Sarvam Tavakrititaya Satatam Bhajate Ananya Pritya Sajayatyarunachalattvai Sukhe Magnaha Srimad Ramana Maharshi Darshanam Arunachalasya Devagira Panchakamarya Gitau Ratnam Dvidam Upanishadam. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was very good.
Thank you.
Yes,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, sir.
An opportunity to talk about Bhagavan, so I am grateful to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.